So I was riding my bicycle with some friends in Johnstown, PA. And the path took us through a darkened tunnel, and I missed a pothole that was in the tunnel, and I went down hard, and I literally couldn't get up. I was rushed to the local hospital and soon found the bad news. I had a broken hip. The good news was there happened to be a surgeon on call that would be able to perform a surgery that everybody deemed that I needed. So there I was lying in a hospital bed in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, in pain, being told I need this surgery, but the good news is there is a surgeon on hand ready to do the surgery. And I asked the doctor who was attending, and I said, out of curiosity, would it make any big difference in the long term if I put this surgery off until tomorrow? And he said, well, you'll have a very unpleasant night, but no, that would likely be fine. So I thought about it for a minute. I thought, do I really want a local surgeon who is a general surgeon in Johnstown, PA, who happened to be on call that night to do this very important surgery that might have a significant implication for the health of my hip and the rest of myself for the rest of my life? And I thought, no, I really want a specialist. And we were able to locate a specialist in Pittsburgh who not only specialized in hip surgery, but he actually specialized in hip trauma surgery, which was exactly what I needed. So I thanked the people in Johnstown and said, I really appreciate it, but if you don't mind, I'm going to wait until tomorrow and get the surgery done in Pittsburgh. And I did take an ambulance that night to Pittsburgh, was prepped for surgery the next day, and had the surgery in Pittsburgh. After the surgery, I put together a team of people that would help me through this recovery process. I put together an acupuncturist, I put together a nutritionist, I put together a physical therapist, and I did what the physical therapist said. I did what the nutritionist said. And for the acupuncturist, I just lied there while the acupuncturist did their thing. But anyway, I'm using this specialist surgeon and this special team. I had what I considered a relatively quick recovery. When I went to visit the surgeon for my first follow-up a month after the surgery, he said it was the fastest recovery he had ever seen. So why do I even bring this up? What relevance does that have? And the relevance is when you have a specialty situation, and probably for most of the people here, the specialty situation is having a significant amount of money in IRAs or qualified money such as IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, SEP, KIOs, etc. When you have a significant amount of money, or perhaps even the majority of your money in these types of investments, that is a specialty area, and you don't want to go to a generalist when you have a specialty area. We're going to be concentrating today, obviously, on trusts and controlling from the grave. And one of the areas that we're going to be concentrating on, and one of the areas that we tend to focus on in our practice, is trusts and controlling from the grave when the base investment is IRAs, retirement plans, 401ks, 403bs, etc. So this webinar will be particularly important for you if obviously you want to cut taxes and protect your family after you are gone. If you do have a significant IRA or retirement plan, it will also be particularly appropriate if you have what I call a Leave It to Beaver family. Perhaps I'm dating myself and you a little bit, but I'm talking about the good old-fashioned Ozzie and Harriet, original husband, original wife, same kids from the same marriage, not kids from his marriage, first marriage, or kids from her second marriage, or the love child from the 60s or something like that. Not that you won't get a lot of great information anyway, But if you have that traditional family unit, we're going to be talking about a solution of what we consider the best estate plan for that Leave It to Beaver type family. And so just out of curiosity, and by the way, I'm a Leave It to Beaver type family. I've been married for 27 years, and we have a 26-year-old daughter, and it is our daughter together. If you are a Leave It to Beaver type family, original husband, original wife, same kids, if you could type a Y in the chat box, that would help me to get an idea of the makeup of the audience today. So anyway, the other people that this would be very good for are people who are interested in what I would say getting everything in shape. So if you could wave a magic wand, for example, what would be a wonderful result? Well, perhaps developing what we call a financial master plan that would include updated and appropriate for your situation, updated wills and trusts and IRA beneficiary designations, and a well-designed estate plan. Getting your investments in order, getting Roth IRA conversion strategies completed, developing, if appropriate, a gift plan, etc. So obviously you can't do that. So we worry, do we have enough money to live at the rate that we want to, at the rate we want to live? Is there something that we are missing? Well, I would urge you to, let's say, take action steps so that you don't have to worry, because you can get solid information. You can get a financial master plan. You can get updated wills, trusts, beneficiary designations, etc. It might take, let's say, between 2 to 6 months, but 2 to 6 months from now, you can have that in place. You can know that you have planned well for yourself and your family. Again, no magic wand, but I do believe it is possible. So today we're really going to talk about the basic types of trusts, like revocable trusts and living trusts. We'll talk a little bit about avoiding probate. We'll also talk about trusts for minor beneficiaries. I consider these relatively standard, even though that doesn't mean that they're usually done right, but I'll just say that they are what I would consider relatively standard trusts. The big thing that probably close to 90% of the estate attorneys get wrong, maybe more, is trusts when the underlying asset is an IRA, retirement plan, 401k, 403b, etc. It's really critical to have 5 specific conditions in that type of trust when the underlying asset is an IRA or a retirement plan. And most estate attorneys don't get this right, even some of the big shot expensive attorneys that have big offices downtown. We're also going to touch on trusts for spendthrifts and other adults. We're going to be talking a little bit about, unfortunately, an ever-growing need for a trust for what we call the I don't want my no-good son-in-law to inherit 1 red cent of my money trust. You would be surprised at how much demand there is for that type of trust. We're going to talk a little bit about trusts for special need or disabled children or chronically ill children that have always been important, and not that they're particularly more important now, but there are some great opportunities for trusts for special needs and chronically ill beneficiaries that we didn't have before. And it's actually changing the landscape. And again, it doesn't apply to a lot of people, but if you have a beneficiary, whether it's a child or a grandchild or somebody that you are leaving money to, and that person does have special needs or is chronically ill, it is critical that you listen to that section of the webinar. We're also going to talk a little bit about alternative to trust, because sometimes trusts are not appropriate, and what are some ways that we can, let's say, get around having a trust. We'll also touch on a new type of trust, or at least relatively new, called a SLAT, that's S-L-A-T, which is the acronym for a spousal lifetime access trust. You might have never heard of it, and probably for the majority of the folks listening, it's not appropriate. But for the ones that it may be appropriate for, it might be a great solution to your estate planning problems. And I could not put on a webinar for trust without at least covering that, even if we don't go into it in great depth. Again, because for most people it is not appropriate. It tends to be much more appropriate for people who have significant after-tax dollars, that it is not appropriate for IRAs and retirement plans. We are going to touch on, as promised, what we call the best estate plan for married IRA owners, and specifically married IRA owners who have that original Leave It to Beaver type family. We're also going to talk a little bit about what happens if you don't get this right. So the difference between getting some of these things right and not getting it right. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the details of what we think is the best solution. That is, if you go to the snooty peer-reviewed journals, they will call it the cascading beneficiary plan. And if you were to type in cascading beneficiary plan in Google, you would get literally thousands of entries, and the first couple hundred, with some exceptions, would point back to me because I'm the one who, let's say, came up with it, and I would prefer to call it Lang's cascading beneficiary plan. So we will touch on that. So what you can expect from me, I will be honest and straightforward with you. We will entertain questions not only during this webinar, but the following webinar at 1 o'clock, where we will have Adam Yofan and Larry Swedroe. And it is important for people who have auto-subscribed. That means if you have said, yes, I'm interested in every webinar that Jim is putting on, please alert me and subscribe me automatically. You are not auto-subscribed to the last one due to we're using different software, and the software that we use for the first three, that is the two yesterday and this one, we are using a different type for the last one. So you do have to subscribe to that. Maybe I will ask Brian and the team to put up a little something in the chat box where you can click and subscribe. By the way, that is always a great program. That and you have Larry Swedroe, who's just like a financial genius, answering questions. And Larry, if you've heard him before, he is very open and will give you the straight talk on investments. I will also be helpful, again, whether you do business with us or not. Am I going to do a pitch at the end for our services? Of course I am. On the other hand, I would say that maybe 95%, I don't know exactly what percentage, but most of this is going to be pure content. What am I looking from you? Well, I'm looking for an open mind. I am hoping that you will, let's say, consider some things that you might not have considered before, and that you learn in the sense that learning is a change of behavior. Very interesting definition I heard recently. When you are presented with new information or new input, that rather than just having an intellectual understanding of it and then going about your life, you actually take some type of action. Again, whether it's with me or whether it is another group of individuals, financial advisors, CPAs, estate attorneys, that the goal of this is to actually have you take action, which could significantly, perhaps by tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe by well over $1 million, have an enormous impact on your family. Again, I have allowed time for questions during this webinar, and then we have the 2-hour pure Q&A that goes from 1 to 3 Eastern, but that will also have investment questions for Larry Swedroe and Adam Yofan. All right, so let's get into the basics. When I say a trust, what am I talking about? what's basically an agreement or a contract, if you will, where a trustee administers your assets in accordance with your wishes. And this trust can be funded while you're alive. Basically, that is called a revocable trust. Revocable meaning that you can change it whenever you feel like it. Some people call that a living trust. You can be your own trustee. So you can say, okay, I'm going to set up maybe I shouldn't call you the Joe Schmo Trust, but let's say your name is Joe Schmo. You can set up the Joe Schmo Trust and name Joe Schmo as the trustee. Or if it's Joe and Jane Schmo, you can have a joint revocable trust, and you could have Joe and or Jane or both of you as the joint trustees of the Joe and Jane revocable trust. Or you could set up a testamentary trust. At my death, and this is usually done through a will, but at my death, this block of money goes into this trust, and here are the terms of the trust, whatever they might be. A trust can be, and again, if you have, by the way, a revocable trust, you not only name yourself as the trustee, and typically you give yourself the power to do anything you feel like, but you also say what happens to the money that is controlled by the trust after your death, and if you're married, after the first death and after the second death. The trust can be revocable. Revocable is you can change it. And I'm going to say probably 98% of the trusts that we draft are revocable. You can also have an irrevocable trust. An irrevocable trust is a trust that you can't change. Why would you even want to do an irrevocable trust? You might want to make sure that the assets that you placed in that trust are not included in your estate. And if you, so let's say for discussion's sake, you set up a trust for your children, and I'll even use $1 million. So you're interested in making $1 million. By the way, this is a very, very, well, not that common, but something that we do. You want $1 million to go to your kids. You don't need the income from that $1 million. In fact, you don't even want that $1 million in your estate when you die. You want to avoid both federal and state inheritance or estate taxes that might be leveled by a state. So what you can do, on the other hand, if you give $1 million to your kids outright, then they could do whatever they want with it, and that they might blow it, they might do something stupid, that money would be subject to creditors, and that might reduce their motivation to work hard and succeed in life. So you might not want to give them $1 million outright. You might want to create an irrevocable trust where you have no income from it, you have no powers over it other than you're the trustee, or even you're not the trustee, actually. You transfer that money, the money's outside your estate, and if you change your mind afterwards, too bad. But again, the advantage of that is it is outside your estate. It is also relatively common to have an irrevocable trust known as an ILET, which is an irrevocable life insurance trust. So let's say that you have some life insurance and you want your kids to be the beneficiaries of that life insurance, and you want them obviously to get it after you, or if you get a second to die policy, after you and your spouse are gone. And you don't want to own that life insurance. If you own the life insurance, that gives you the power to change the beneficiaries. But let's say you don't need the power to change the beneficiaries. You can create an irrevocable trust. You make gifts to the trust. Then the trust uses that money to pay the premium. And then, as the euphemism that the insurance guys use is, when the policy matures, then whatever the death benefit is goes to your kids according to the terms of the trust. And these trusts, basically all of them that I have been talking about, allow you to control the disposition of your money after your death. And a lot of people both need that. A lot of people want that. And that is what we are going to be talking about today.